Welcome to the Fitness and Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Danny Kennedy, and I'm here to help you become the very best version of yourself.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to this week's episode of the Fitness and Lifestyle Podcast. And today I'm joined by the founders of CorePlus and CorePlus Connected. Mike, Amy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Danny. Thanks for having
us. Thanks for having us, DK.
Absolute pleasure. Typically would be either in the gym or in the office talking shit, but as we spoke about before, we might just record it today in a different setting. Guys, before we kind of dive into some of the things I want to touch on, I'd love to hear about like the origin story of how CorePlus even came about, like whether it started with one studio or whether you guys are both as super into Pilates or how it all kind of come about in the first place.
Well, I suppose that belongs to me. I started my yoga journey about 15 years ago, and I fell in love with it straight away and really just set myself a mission to really engage and do as much yoga as I could. And, you know, that's led me down a path of Pilates as well and really this space that we're in at the moment, which is super exciting. I never set the intention to start CorePlus and franchise it. It really just evolved and that's where it's got to today. You know, I'm super lucky to have my partner and my husband involved in the business as well. But yeah, we started CorePlus 5 years ago, and that was a combination of loving yoga and Pilates, and there was a really strong internal demand for our instructors to open studios and
in other locations, yeah.
In other locations, and really that's where we started our franchise journey. So we call them studio partners because we don't love the word franchise. But Mike had a big corporate job and wasn't necessarily loving it, and we made a big decision about 5 years ago for him to leave that job and start, you know, CorePlus and the CorePlus franchising, and we haven't really looked back. It's, you know, a lot of people say, you know, well done, but you never really feel like you get there. So for us, the journey started really just a passion that I loved, and that was yoga and Pilates.
How was was that a tough decision to step away from the full-time corporate stuff, knowing that it was pretty unknown as to how the CorePlus business would go?
Yeah, I mean, answering it now, it's a pretty sort of, you know, easy, or on reflection, it was kind of easy if I know what I know now, but at the time it was massive, and you know, I was kind of helping Amy out, you know, part time, and I was doing my MBA at the time, and I was and working, yeah, as Amy said, in a pretty full on kind of corporate role, and yeah, you're giving up the known and everything you know, sort of known historically,
security that
and
you had,
security,
yeah.
But it was I always felt I was pretty you know, not overly compatible with the corporate world. I was pretty sick of all the politics and the bullshit that went with it, and always knew that I kind of wanted to do something or do something together. And we had this sort of obvious opportunity right in front of us. So yeah, I mean, answering it now, it's sort of easy, but quickly forgotten how much of a big decision it was at the time. And I think we had our second daughter not long before I made the decision. So there was other factors
as well
at play. Yeah.
Were you saying that when you stepped away from the corporate stuff, had you already decided to franchise?
So we had a lot of internal demand from a couple of instructors that had a lot of faith in us, and Preston in particular, who's Louise and Arthur, who were good friends with us, and really, you know, Mike and I had been chatting about it for a little while, so we kind of had a few things in play in regards to transitioning over to a franchise. We'd opened a second studio, we'd seen that kind of become really super successful. We saw the ability to build a great community in another location. And then at that point, we decided to start kind of really operationalise all of it. And Mike took on that massive duty of becoming a franchise.
And I don't think we ever thought we're building this brand and we're going to franchise it. It was such an organic thing, and as Amy said,
just listen to the audience.
Yeah, it was demand driven, and people came to us and said, like, we felt like we had a pretty good thing going, and people loved the classes and the community in the studios, but we never said, this is the strategy, we're going to franchise this brand. It in essence came to us from that really organic, those inquiries. Yeah. And when I stepped away, you know, and it was sort of an interesting stage because I'd kind of gone from earning the most I've ever earned in my career, but was really unhappy.
Yeah.
and there was sort of this disproportionate relationship between money and
Yes,
happiness, and then stepped away, and I wouldn't say sort of immediately happier, but there was this sense of fulfillment and that we were working towards something. But we sort of reflect and joke now that in the first 12 months, I literally, had no impact on the business and probably cost the business money because we like to set up a franchise is very regulated in Australia as it is in most places. And
that was my next question. So for someone that's listening, maybe they've already got, they're in a similar boat, might not be in the health and fitness industry, but they've got a business that's doing well and they're potentially thinking about franchising. Like what does that process involve? Like right from day one, like what needs to kind of happen for that to be a thing?
It is a process, and it's a long process that you often can't really, fast forward. You've got to work through and have your systems in place. So we were really lucky that we got introduced to some great people and had some really good advisors around us, and almost took us under their wing from an advisory sense. And but first and foremost, you've got to have your operations manual. That's what everyone sort of, you bed down your systems and operations and think about it from a single location. And effectively that's just documenting everything that you already do on a day-to-day basis. And then I suppose in parallel to that, you can you're engaging lawyers to build out your franchise agreement and disclosure document, and that's just that's obviously an expensive process and a long process. And that gives you, and we sort of, we tried to go about it a little bit differently as well, because franchising, we love the structure. We think it's a very good structure, but it's a little bit of a dirty word in some senses. Yeah. So we didn't just take the stock standard franchise agreement. We pulled out anything that we felt we wouldn't agree to ourselves, and really worked and tried to have that reflect, as much as it is a legal document, still reflect our values.
And I'll add in there, it's really important as well at the very start of that journey to really select those first people that become your franchisees or your studio partners in our case. And we had utmost confidence in our first couple that came on board, and that's really why we kind of saw the strength in being able to do it and roll it out. And I think that's a key decision that needs to be looked at in the really early days. And
I would imagine that the decision wouldn't have just been based off how invested they were into Pilates, but more so like their qualities as a person as well.
It's absolutely, totally right. For all of our studio partners, there's so many elements that come down to the way that they look at their community, they treat their members, they treat our instructors. It's super important, and we do a lot of work, and we've said no to a lot of people along the way because it just hasn't felt right. And I think for us, we have to be really genuine and really stick to the reason why we're building this business is for it's giving us satisfaction, and definitely there's elements that are beneficial in terms of revenue and a lovely lifestyle and all that stuff. But truly, we're passionate about this, and we want to make sure that we choose the right people always.
So 5 years ago it was the first one. Yeah. Yep. So I feel as though it's grown super quick. Are you able to kind of disclose how many locations there are at the moment, and kind of like what it looks like in terms of how much interest you've got in locations?
Yeah, you're right. It has gone super quick. I mean, click your fingers, and it's been 5 years, and 2 years of that's COVID, right? And we're sort of so grateful.
And 3 kids.
Yeah, shit.
3 kids. So, which I wouldn't advise for anyone listening to have 3 kids and start a franchise. But somehow it works. But yeah, so we're up to 13 locations open now. We've sold 24 territories and have done the master franchise partnership in Canada, which is super excited. I was on a call with them this morning. They're very close to signing their first over in Toronto. So yeah, it's in some ways it feels like it's been slow and steady growth, but then there has been that sort of step change to get to those locations. And even in the face of COVID, which we don't want to sort of dwell and focus on too much, but to still open locations. I think we've opened 6 or 7 in the last 2 years.
That's awesome.
And the ability to now be in a position where we could open 6 in the same month and have confidence in our rollout of the franchises and the operations manual and the training component as well. That's truly like, previously if kind of 10 people have come to us, we would have been completely overwhelmed. We've got such a strong structure around us in our head office and also our training and development team as well. And because of that, we're really in a position now where we can take on more business and take on more opportunities. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we want our members to have their best experience ever in the studio. And if we had have taken too much on in the early days, then we probably would have been scrambling and not done the benefits to ourselves personally, but also to the brand and our business. And so we're super lucky now with the network that we're surrounded by, that we can really focus on growing and evolving.
Yeah. Is it quite stressful the more locations you open? Obviously, like I feel when I think about it, I'm like, all right, so if you obviously know what your core values are and you're very selective with who you choose, but in the end of the day, it's still like once it's done, that's kind of out of your hands. And then not only the owners of the location, but also like the staff that they're getting to work there. So like how much of that do you guys still have to oversee, or how much do you kind of just have to trust that they're going to kind of follow along with how you see it, envision it?
So this is something we learnt in the very early days, and we wanted the ability to ensure that our instructors within the studios are trained by us. And so that's something that we still do now. We facilitate all instructor training.
Even to all locations?
To all locations. So we felt there's a lot of strength in that one, consistency across the brand, and hate using the term McDonald's, but it's a similar thing, that no matter which studio you go into, you get the same class, you get the same amazing energy that our instructors bring, and you leave completely satisfied and a bit sweaty too.
Yeah, regardless of where you go.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's so true. Like our studio partners are obviously super important to us, but the instructors are really that key interface with members and the delivery of the classes and the experience. So that was a really, looking back, it was a pretty important strategic decision to do that, to still maintain the contact and the relationship and the training, and not just initially but ongoing as well with the instructors.
So it's not the management of it; it's just the class structure and development for ongoing. But the studio partner does the rest of it in terms of within their studios.
Yeah. A couple of questions off the back of that. So the first one is, what's your advice for business owners who, I'll use myself for an example, is that like even though my business has grown a lot, one of the things I struggle with a lot is, I'm better with it now, but earlier on was like letting go of certain responsibilities and giving them, like kind of delegating them to someone else. You know what I mean? So what's your advice around that in terms of being able to kind of let go of your baby, I guess, and kind of pass responsibility to other people?
I thought you were going to ask, what's your advice to business owners that are married? So I'm glad.
That's coming. Wait, it's coming soon. Yeah.
No, that's a massive one. Amy's better at this than I am. I'm, suffer from a perfectionism curse, which is a bit of a double-edged sword, because obviously there's so much detail that goes into what we've done and fitting out the studios and the design, and I still struggle with that. I don't know exactly what the answer is. I think you just get a bit better with it over time. The reality of growth forces you to do it sometimes. There's just only so much that you can be involved in and be as hands-on. But the one thing I would say is have an amazing team, which we're so fortunate to have at head office and across the board, mind you, over in Canada as well, and our head office team here and the studio partners. But that makes it so much easier to delegate.
I completely agree, and I think it's a lot of work initially and upfront, but once you've got all the elements there that you want to see continued on or create that consistency, once you've kind of got those components and the training is really thorough, and there's this sense of importance around carrying our brand and carrying our values with them along the journey. Once they know that and they really get that sense of what that is, then you've got to trust. And you know, we've got one of our kind of key roles is that studio support and development role within our head office, and it's a huge role for us, and it's a big opportunity for us to ensure that the studios feel supported. If they're unsure about something, they've got a contact that they can go to, and really at the end of the day, they're not kind of stuck there guessing, you know, what should we do?
Trying to figure it out themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I always say, you know, if I was a studio partner, what would I want and what would I what would I be asking for right now? And so with that lens on, every time we do a campaign or we introduce a new class or bring a certain component into it, we try and give them as much information and as much preparation as we can so they're really super prepared and have confidence.
Yep.
And that's really what the key is.
The second part of that is like looking back at your experience now. In your opinion, for a business that's scaling, what is, let's say, like the first three or the top three kind of roles that you would like palm off to someone else that you think it was going to accelerate growth and take kind of time or give you time back in the beginning, like right from the start?
Oh, gee, that's a good question. To narrow it down to three, I think one area that's really helped us is having someone full-time focusing on, we don't like to say franchise sales, but in that, you know, someone that's really responding to the inquiries as they're coming in and nurturing the leads that are coming through. I think that studio success one is enormous, because you don't want to go and chase growth at the expense of your existing studios quality, that are already open. And coming back to a point that was made earlier, even though it feels like we've grown fairly quickly, it hasn't exploded. It's been quite steady and gradual, and it's intentional. They're all in Melbourne or Victoria. We can drive to them, because I think if you always
start to lose control a little bit,
you do. And yeah, I mean, even our strategy is so simple. Our first pillar of our strategy is to support and grow the existing studios before opening new ones and before selling more territories.
And that's ultimately what my role is within our company or organisation, is looking at those studios that are developed. Mike does a lot of the pre-work in the sales and the pre-opening, but from that point, you know, 8 weeks from when they open, they don't really see me up until that point, but then they see me a lot. You know, there's so much that we invest into those first couple of months, but at the same time, we'd love for our studio partners to really learn early on as well, learn what they're responsible for.
Give them the tools instead of just passing it to them on a plate.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's one.
So that was two, right?
Two. That's two.
The third, and this is quite self-serving, but we haven't hired or we haven't filled this role, I still wear this hat, would be around the kind of project management piece. So it is like we're trying to build 6 between now and the end of the year. Okay. And there's a lot in working with the architect, working with the different builders, even, you know, negotiating the leases. So someone on that front around that project management piece, I think is really important. There's so many out there. You could have a lot more, and you sort of
content and all that type of stuff.
Marketing's really important. Yeah, I think like we're bricks and mortar first and foremost. We're almost, and obviously we have a pretty strong social presence, and we've got the app now, and we really have pushed into the digital space. But it was such a low priority in the early days because, and there was, you know, it was important in some ways, but we said to our studio partners and instructors, don't worry too much. You've got real people right in front of you. So you know,
and if you give them a good enough service, then they'll do the work for you by referring others and whatnot. Yeah,
but it is now like content is massive, right? And it's something that you do an amazing job at with your stuff, and that's just such a great way of getting the expanding the reach.
I never thought it would become a dedicated role in our head office, but it's a dedicated role.
Has to be now, doesn't it? Yeah, definitely. It's funny.
And the amount of work that goes through, you know, that kind of component of the business is unbelievable.
It's funny, like I've found anyway, the last probably like 4 to 5 years, it's kind of like done like a bit of a cycle. So it started off when content started to become, when people realised that it was important, it was all like just perfectly curated pictures and content of like, this is fucking the perfect image. Whereas now it's kind of come back to more stuff like this, as in like people want to see
real
like
communities,
what happens behind the scenes, or just unedited stuff, or just like the day-to-day stuff which people would actually find interesting. And then like you kind of said, it's for anyone who just doesn't like using social media or doesn't know how to or whatever, like it's a bit of fucking bad luck because if you're not doing it, you're going to be so far behind that you just have to do it.
It's
a
so
ticket to play
interesting
now.
because we've always looked at our members and our instructors being our ambassadors, and CorePlus we've never actively gone out and paid someone to talk about us nicely.
Yeah.
And so we are like truly grateful that our community of members, instructors, our studio partners talk about us in that way, and they're really truly our ambassadors. And so I suppose in that respect, social absolutely hands down super important, and we love that component as well. But we see value in other areas as well.
I think you made a good point before as well, and I say this to a lot of the, because I get a fair few new PTs coming out asking for like advice and stuff, and so because of social media, so many people put all their emphasis on getting new clients. But like you said before, if your retention rate sucks or your service or your product drops off because of the fact you're so solely focused on putting out content to get new people, then it's a bit of a lose-lose. Like you might be getting new clients, but you're losing them at the same rate. So if you're taking care of what the clients you've already got, then that's half the battle, I reckon.
Yeah, it's a vicious cycle, isn't it? And just economically, it's so much more expensive to try and acquire a new customer than it is to retain an existing one. And completely. And I think that's what we say. There's no sort of secret strategy. It's just concentrate on delivering the best experience possible for that member on that day. And it's why we don't do swipe cards at the reception, because we want instructors to remember our members' names, and it encourages conversation. People stick around after. It's not, the community thing is not forced upon people, but it's there. And I think it does, like it does contribute to that whole retention piece.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Going back to COVID, again, we won't talk about COVID too much, but obviously I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that was like the catalyst to start CorePlus Connected.
Yeah, so CorePlus Connected was born in COVID, and so was my daughter Lucy. So I actually...
Which one's more important?
I know. When my kids ask me what we did when we were locked down for 2 years, I'll say I had a baby, which is a really easy answer. But yeah, so it was more Mike's baby at first, and we basically threw out
CorePlus Connected or Lucy?
I was going to say, I bloody hope
she
so.
Still is my baby.
She's safe.
We threw it out to our social pages and just had free access to live classes that stayed on Facebook, and we made a conscious decision to really put some thought into what we were going to create with CorePlus Connected, and time, energy, effort as well. And we've created what we think is the best yoga and Pilates live on demand platform out there. Totally biased.
Yeah, that's all right. It's good. You'd hope so.
And we create new content each week, new class drops each week as well. And for us, it's a component that we can give to our current members if they go away on holidays or they want some time out from the studio. But it's also a great opportunity for us to leverage, different class types and also instructor highlights. And do you
reckon that's do you think that the fact that you guys have invested into that now, like obviously was accelerated by the fact we went into lockdown? Like if that hadn't happened, how long, if at all, do you reckon it would have taken for you guys to kind of want to push in that direction as well?
It's a good question. We always had on the roadmap that we would have a multi-channel offering, and it's sort of it's a really complementary offering to the studios. What COVID did is it was somewhere on the list, but we were so focused on opening the locations and making sure they were really successful, and
it's on the back burner a bit.
It was down the list, and obviously the first COVID lockdown put it to the very top of the list really quickly. But it's sort of exactly what you said before, that it doesn't have to be perfect, and if, we sort of look back and shudder a little bit at what the first iteration of CorePlus Connected looked like. But what it showed us was that it could be imperfect. Like we literally got a camera, a tripod. I don't even know if we had a light at that point. We had shitty carpet in our office at the time, and an instructor and a mat, and we did Facebook Lives. And in the background, we were building the app. And when we made the decision really quickly, we we partnered with Vimeo in New York to start building that, but it was a 3 to 4 month build. So for whatever that is, 90 days or 120 days, I think, probably as long as the first lockdown, we went into the office, we live streamed to Facebook every morning, 7 a.m, imperfectly with not all the gear and with terrible carpet, and the engagement from members was unbelievable. And I think what it was just a way for people to stay connected, and that's why we named it CorePlus Connected initially, and still now. But it's exactly what people wanted and needed when they were stuck at home.
It's I find that so important though, like just getting started. Like I've told this story a million times, but about like even with the podcast, like up until probably 18 months ago, I started investing into decent stuff. But for the first, however many years it was, like 3 years or whatever, it was literally just my Mac, a USB adapted mic. Some of my episodes have been literally recorded under the fucking doona cover, like on my bed, so the sound would be good, or in the car and stuff like that. But if you wait until you feel like you've got it all down, you'll never start.
It's a journey, really, at the end of the day. And even now, we're doing a bit of a brand refresh and ready for kind of a relaunch or a refresh later this year. And at the time, what you create looks awesome, feels awesome, but everything evolves, and we've even found that with CorePlus Connected now. It's really evolving, and we're getting the real feel for it and what our community wants as well on the platform.
On that topic, so whether it's with the studios or whether it is CorePlus Connected, what type of avenues have you found most effective for feedback from from the clients and the members and your community? Like, what are some of the ways that you actively kind of get that feedback to adapt, whether it be in person or online?
So it's easy to tell top-rated videos. So for us, we really we've got strength when it comes to yoga and Pilates. So we always try and stay in our own lane when it comes to our product offering. We don't want to be a million things. We don't want to be experts in all these other areas. And truly that's what's brought us success as well. So we're passionate about it. Our instructors are passionate about it. Our studio partners are head office. And really that's kind of what we focus on, yoga and Pilates. And that's what's bringing us success on the platform and in the studio.
I think that's such a good point. It's like, the definition of strategy is what you don't do, and we're in this kind of fad-based industry, right? And we've done kettlebell yoga, and we've had we've done shadow boxing in the studios, and a lot of work was done on that. Like, what most important, that's what the question was. Like, how do you find out what your members want? And we're always talking to members, instructors, in formal ways and informally as well, but. It was a pretty big decision to just consolidate. We really are grounded in yoga and Pilates at its origin. Bikram and yoga, 500 plus years old, and Pilates 100 years old. So there's these kind of established practices that we've modernised, but we removed the fad aspect to it, and I think that was quite a pivotal moment to remove the fads and just focus on. It's still plenty of innovation within the classes and variety, but
I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel, just doing it better than everyone else.
That's it.
All right, so for anybody who is listening at the moment, obviously we touched on already that clearly business partners married as well, which would have its difficulties, I would assume. For anyone listening that maybe their business partner is their best friend, or maybe it is their romantic partner, whatever it may be, how do you guys navigate that to make sure that the work gets done, but then you've still got your time as a couple and as a family and stuff as well, and that doesn't kind of backfire?
It's a great question, and I'd say from our perspective, it's always a work in progress. The thing initially that helped us out a lot was our roles were pretty clearly defined. Like, we know each other well and our strengths, and it was almost a conversation that didn't need to be had, but we just knew that the areas that I would focus on and Amy would focus on, and there wasn't even really a focus. It was just we just did it, and there was some good overlap. And not to say that we sort of agree on absolutely everything, but it was clear where our strengths were and what we focused on. But I think just clear communication. Trying to have some sort of boundaries and rules in place, which is obviously easier said than done. Even just this week, we were having a conversation about turning our our laptops off at night, at least a couple of nights a week. But it is. It's a constant juggle.
Yeah, I'd love to be able to say that, we leave work at work and home is home, but that's definitely not the case. We are getting better at it, definitely. But it's, CorePlus is such a big part of our life, and it's really, it's absolutely kind of, even if you look at our values and what we stand for, one of them is family values, and we really want to be known for that, and so it's hard to really separate CorePlus and home life. And so as I think Mike's right, we've both got our roles and they're really defined now, and it took a little while to get there. Absolutely. We've had some great strategy sessions working out what we're both individually working on, and it just works now.
I think we haven't felt that it's become a problem, so that's probably a really good thing to acknowledge, that we haven't had to pull each other up and strictly say, this is actually becoming an issue for us. And I think a lot of that comes down to we absolutely love, we're so passionate about what we're building and the people that we work with, that you almost don't want to, work-life balance. You don't want to switch off it. They do really, merge nicely together. And, even if it's the kids coming into the office, and if we're still working and talking about CorePlus at night, it doesn't feel like a chore or a burden, when it comes to
passion,
passionate place. And obviously there's stress, and it's not all, it's not all easy and rosy. But when you are truly passionate about what you're trying to achieve and the impact you're trying to have, and we're really clear on that it hasn't got to a point where it's got too much or become an issue.
If I've got a night off or a morning off, which I'm so in particular, I love doing my exercise and I love being able to spend time on myself each day, but I'll normally go to CorePlus. So, it kind of shows that we do love it. You'll find me at some of the studios around Melbourne.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have that component, but we talk about other things as well, thankfully.
But I guess communication is clearly one of the biggest factors, is making sure you understand how to communicate effectively. That would have to be, and I would assume that would be a massive component of staff as well, and your business partner. So how have you found, how important is it that you kind of nail your communication between, people that work for you, or even communication with members and stuff, to make sure everything kind of flows properly?
You're never given, how to do it, or, communication for dummies type book. You learn along the way. And I definitely think that, I'll definitely be humble and just say that we're not perfect at it. Absolutely, by no means. And we're always improving. And I think that's the key. We try and do the best that we can. We love our staff, we love the studio partners, and we want to support them as much as we can. And I think that really kind of shows in our communication. And I think it's important to kind of understand where anyone's at, if there's any challenges that they're facing as well, or always if we can support them as well. There's so many components of our business where we allow our staff just to really run with projects, and that's really important for us to kind of have that faith in them, and we completely trust them. But knowing that communicating with them that we're here for support is what they value.
And I think it's the culture too that we've tried to set. It's probably an extension of our own personalities and our own values, you could say. We're a pretty open book, and we've got an open plan office, and what it's like. It's pretty cozy in there, and there's no secrets, and that's the way we try to run. Sometimes there could be a bit of oversharing and too much information on a personal front but I think everyone's so comfortable. The team are just so open, and it's nice, and that's on a sort of a personal level. But then on a business sense, when we did the capital raise, for example, a couple of years ago, there was no sort of closed door secret stuff going on with meetings and presentations. It was really open, and we brought people along for the ride, and as part of that process, we
allows them to feel part of everything. Yeah,
and also just allows your mind not to creep into a place of shit, what's going on? What's all these? It's a positive conversation, and it is part of those family values, and another value we have is around shared success, and we've done the employee share option program for the team, and I know you're sort of asking more around communication, but it's just, I think the key is around, and it extends to the studios with pricing, for example, unlike some gyms where it's a bit of a mystery and you've got to negotiate and you don't know if I'm getting a better deal than you, and you've probably negotiated better. So, the pricing's just there. It's all very overt and clear communication. I think that's at all levels, and there's lots of different examples of that. But being open and there's really no secrets and nothing to hide, which I think is the key.
Is there anything I often find when you talk to successful people or people that are doing well in whatever industry or field they're in, there's been like some form of adversity or setback, or whether it's a mistake or just a really big learning curve that at the time probably felt like shit, but in the long run you realise that that if without that, then the growth that you've had may not have happened. Is there anything in particular that you found that really sticks out, that has been a steep kind of learning curve but has pushed you guys in the right direction?
It's an interesting question, because I think, as we go on this journey and as we grow bigger, I think there definitely will be, roadblocks or humps, whatever you want to call it. There's nothing really that's kind of set us back too much outside of the obvious, which was COVID. But, in some respects that did really help us with the CorePlus Connected and putting our classes online digitally and really thriving in that market and that new industry for us. So it's hard to say. I think as a business owner, you just have to kind of roll with the punches. I think that's what the saying is. If you can kind of foresee all these things that are happening, which would be great. It's almost like looking looking down kind of the scope of where your future is going, and no one knows that. So for us, it's having the right people around us, that if issues do arise or there's something that becomes problematic, we've got a network of great people that we can rely on.
Yeah, it's probably the biggest adversity we've all felt in our lifetime, and particularly fitness and aviation and some other industries that copped it pretty hard. But I did the numbers, and we were closed 339 days in 2 years. So that's basically 1 in 2 years. Yeah. It was pretty ordinary. I think it taught us a lot of lessons. It was sort of nice forced slowdown, even though we were launching CorePlus Connect. It was pretty full on, but the time that you got at home with the kids, and I know Amy was doing the brunt of the homeschooling, so I can probably find the silver lining in it, but there was some challenges that came with that. But
I think as well, it particularly COVID, as we talked about before, you go from your whole business having to change completely it was literally overnight, like getting put into lockdown, it's overnight. But then what I found afterwards anyway is that you realise that, it's small little problems that you have on like a daily or weekly basis that you work yourself up about means fuck all compared to like what you've had to do, which, you probably don't necessarily think about it that way as much because you're left with no other choice.
Yeah.
But then when you kind of reach those little humps in the road or the roadblocks, now it's like, this is a piece of piss because I've done
totally. And it's all about reframing it, right? It is what it is, and that's what we looked at in COVID, and, ensuring that we kind of had the right focus and knew what we wanted to achieve was really what got us through it. We're so lucky that the studios have come out so strong, stronger than ever, in fact, which is super exciting for us. We've had a lot of people that have invested time in lockdown to do something else in their career. So we've had a lot of interest from Pilates and yoga instructors, and we're always constantly recruiting as well. So there definitely were the kind of, I don't know, I suppose you'd call it like the issues at the time, but we worked through them, and I feel like we're in a stronger position now.
Yeah, it teaches you pretty quickly what's important in life and what's not. So that helps you, what to let go of versus what to focus on. And it sounds a bit basic, but being grateful for certain things, like, meeting up, your social kind of stuff was pretty limited. Yeah. So I just think meeting up with a mate for a kick of the footy or a run was a pretty basic luxury, but it was at the time. And to meet up for a coffee involved getting a takeaway and sitting in the front seat of your car around town, like that's sort of what it.
Or at St. Vincent Park.
Yeah, I know that you're still traumatised by that.
Let's not talk about that. Beep that out. Before we wrap up, guys, where do you hope to see CorePlus within the next kind of 5 years?
It's a great question. Look, I think that where I hope to see CorePlus in 5 years is to continue expanding the studios across. We want to be in every state of Australia. We want to have a really good presence in North America as well. We're off to Singapore next week. The market's really taking off in this space up there. So that's cool. That's really exciting. And look, who knows exactly what the future holds? I have so much confidence that it's going to be positive, whatever it is. But I think that's part of the journey. It's just so exciting, knowing that you're tracking in the right direction. But also a bit of the unknown as well.
Unreal.
And if it's anything like the last 5 years, I'm sure it's going to be pretty incredible and hang on for the ride.
Yeah, we've got some key objectives, and we always think about 100 studios throughout Australia in 5 years' time, maybe a little bit longer. But for us, we're really grateful that we're able to go on the journey, and that will be kind of for us where we see success, that we're still enjoying it and we're still enjoying the journey. And we often reflect on how lucky we are that we do something that we love, how lucky we are we've got the flexibility to be able to have our own business. And I think for us, the important key is that we kind of stay true to our values, and we ensure that this growth will come when we think about those components, and that we'll continue on the journey.
I think it comes back to one of the very first things you said, which was around saying no to certain people, and like 100 is still a big number, but it's not 1,000, for example. And you see some brands really scale, but for us, we'd rather have 100 whose number we've got in our phones that we talk to personally.
Yeah.
And I think it's all about like how much do you need? How big do you want this to get? And what we're obviously ambitious. There's no doubt about that. But
you don't want to lose sight of the actual purpose.
It can come at a cost, and you go, what do you need, and how big is big enough?
Yeah.
And I think the thing for us is that it's always been personal. We want to work with, say, 100, which is still a pretty lofty
large
objective.
number. Yeah.
And it will be, that's a big business at 100, but it will still be personal. Like, we'll still be there, physically visiting the studios, involved in the openings.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like in the same way as like self-development, you never really get there. I think that's what having a business feels like as well. That's
where the dopamine hits us. It's the journey. It's not like...
Totally, yeah. And you know what? We'll never get there and go, we're here, we're at 100 studios. There will be other components. There might be other business opportunities. There might be more growth in certain areas. For us, it's evolving and ensuring that, we kind of follow what we're true to and what makes us and our group feel good.
But that's been a key lesson for me, is that, the not to sort of lose too much or focus too much on the end
result
state, right? Because you go, if you're just got a one-track mind on whatever that growth is or whatever that number is, and then when I hit that, then I'll be happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we all know, like now with all the work that we're doing in the space, you sort of know that that's not the case.
Yeah.
And to really pull back and go, enjoy what you're doing on a daily basis, and showing up for the right reasons. And the journey is far more rewarding. I'm sure the outcome will be rewarding, but it's so unknown, and when you get there, it might not be as rewarding as you think. But if you're not enjoying what you're doing along the way,
exactly right. The result's probably not going to be any more enjoyable, is it?
That's it.
Yeah. Well, Mike, Amy, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been fun.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, appreciate it.
For everyone who's listening or watching this episode, if you've enjoyed the conversation, then first of all, give these guys a follow on social media. I'll have all the links to CorePlus's obviously website and social media and stuff in the show notes. And if you have enjoyed the conversation, we'd love for you to take a screenshot, post this up on your Instagram story, tag myself, tag CorePlus. And if you have any further questions, or if someone out there wants to open up their own, then I'll have the contact details for these guys in the show notes too.
Address.
I will. All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Danny.
Okay.